Welcome back, my silent and deadly assassins out there. It has been a while. There just really hasn't been anything new about Starfield, but last week we did get some drop about questions they are going to start answering about the game. And it sounds like this is going to be the first one of a new series they're going to kind of go into. So basically what I'm going to do here is just kind of play the video that they released last week and just kind of get some talking points and kind of see if we can kind of figure out a little bit more about what they're hinting at as to what is coming from the game Starfield. Okay, so Bethesda releasing this last week, and it was actually kind of interesting when they were put this video on YouTube, on their YouTube. They actually had it unlisted. They didn't even have it listed yet, and then they actually put it over for public listing. I think later in the week. I think they put it up last Tuesday. And then they put it up for the public listing on, I think, Thursday. So it's just kind of interesting that they did that. Yeah, so it gives us something to talk about. And I haven't really been able to get to this as quickly as I have been because I was mostly gone for the previous 3 weeks. But I'm kind of getting back in town, getting settled in and getting things back going. But to be pretty honest, I'm excited. Hopefully, we're going to get some really good content and information from Bethesda on the game Starfield here going forward with this series at least. So let's just take a look at it. Got a quick early shot here, and in the background, you gotta really like this concrete sculpture up on the wall here at the Bethesda. I'm sure their studio office. Really freaking cool to see this. But let me just go ahead and get it rolling, and we'll talk about some things, and I'll just pause it throughout the video.
Hi, I'm Jess Finster, Community Director, and I'm here visiting Bethesda Game Studios where the team is hard at work on Starfield. I just want to say how grateful we all are for all of the feedback, support, and questions that you've been sharing with us on Reddit, Discord, Twitter. So we wanted to take a moment to answer some of those questions in our new series. So let's get started. First thing that we want to know is what inspired Starfield?
Oh, so many things. I think the main ones that, I'm going to go back like in time here. Sundog is a big one. Amazing game, kind of like the science fiction game when Ultimas were out. It also had this parserless interface, kind of one of the first games where you're moving objects around and putting them together, but great game where you had your own ship and you could explore around that I loved. Another one, this is a kind of pen and paper role-playing game at the time where D&D was getting popular, is this game Traveler. Traveler was a little more hard science fiction. The other thing there is one of the first games I programmed on the Apple II at the time. I really wanted to make a Traveler game. It was also my first time realizing that computers had memory that you could run out of. I can already see the comments, people saying, you've been running computers out of memory for 40 years now, but that's an easy comment, everybody. You can do better. But those are the big ones, hearkening back to those old role-playing games that we loved, and hey, can we pull off something like this with today's computers and consoles, etc.
You mentioned.
So I'll go ahead and pause it here real quick. So when she first comes in, she talks about there's going to be this new series. So that's the first time we kind of hear about this new series that they're going to go into. Just kind of talking about some of the finer points of the game. So really great to hear that. So it just means that there's going to be new information, new content coming about the development process and some of the, I guess, questions that they've had to answer, not to the community, but to themselves about what they want out of Starfield. So that's kind of great to hear that, and we'll just get to see more about that later on. As Todd Howard answers this question about, what inspired Starfield and kind of what was the ideas behind it, feel free to go ahead and date yourself down in the comments below if you played Sundog and Traveler, or if you remember those two games. I do not. I did not know those games existed, but it was just kind of interesting to see how far back he was kind of referencing. And yeah, we will we'll see if people are aligning with Todd Howard and what those games were about back in the day. And for those that don't really know, Sundog and Traveler. Well, Sundog came out back in like 1984. Traveler came out in the late 1970s. And so, yeah, they were around for a while. They've been around for a good while. But just understanding how old those games are and kind of how far back Todd Howard is referencing when he talks about those two games.
You mentioned hard space or hard sci-fi, and I know that that's one of the things that's been hotly debated in the community. Is Starfield considered a hard sci-fi?
I never quite know, like, because that's always like, what do they think it is if you say yes or no? I think it is more hard to us, hard science fiction, where you can draw that line from, okay, here's how man explored space, and you can like even look at our ships and say, all right, that has some, visual identity back to that. But it's a trap question because it's a video game, right? Like a hard science fiction video game would be you die in space cold. And a good example, we were really into fuel and how the gravity drive works. And like, I'm reading papers on like quantum physics and, bending space in front of you. You don't actually warp, you bend the space, you bring the space towards you. And so what we were playing that, and it became like very punitive to the player. Your ship would run out of fuel and the game would just stop. You just want to get back to what you're doing. So we've recently changed it where the fuel in your ship and the grav drive limits how far you could go at once, but it doesn't run out of fuel. Maybe there'll be an update or a mod that allows that, but that's what we're doing now.
Constellation members are excited about the character customization.
All right, so I'll just go ahead and pause it right here. So one of the things I kind of take away from this is they have been playing the game, right? Before, in previous information that we've gotten about Starfield, they've wanted it to be single player focused. Okay, I have made videos before saying just because they said it's going to be single player focused doesn't mean it's going to be single player only. And there has been other people, other YouTubers, other people, articles or whatever saying that it's going to be single player only. And we have never seen that talked about before. So if you want a single player only experience, or an experience where you don't have to rely on other, human beings or whatever, this is obviously a little bit of a move, I would say, towards that single player only experience. As you run out of fuel in the game, you do not have to rely on other people to bring you fuel like you do in other games, like you do in Elite Dangerous and other games like that. So this, I would say, doesn't mean it's single player only still, right? We still have not got that specific answer yet, but I would say it does remove that reliance possibly on other people having to bring you fuel. So it's kind of it's probably one that, to be pretty honest, I'm kind of glad for that, even though I do want a little bit of playing with friends element in the game, but I wouldn't want to be reliant on other people to make sure I don't run out of fuel, or I'm not just floating in space because I did run out of fuel because I did something dumb or whatever. So I'm really kind of glad they went this way. And what it sounded like is that there will be some kind of fuel system, but you won't run out of fuel. Okay. So it might be one of those where your fuel drains down, you get down to a limit, and maybe you have a minimum jump drive that you can always activate. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 light years or something like that you will always be able to kind of utilize. And maybe you can have a maximum jump drive up to 30, 35. Who knows if you have the right jump drives and full on fuel requirements. So it'd just kind of be interesting to see kind of how all that works together. But it does sound like there will be a fuel system, just you won't run out of fuel. And to be pretty honest, that's kind of relieving because, like he just said, it is a game for the most part. And yeah, I mean, if you really want to make a hard sci-fi game, I mean, any game can be a hard sci-fi if you just say you're dead and you can't ever play the game again, right? So they made a little bit simpler, ease of use situation here. And let's just carry on.
And the traits in the game. Can you talk more about what players will experience with the traits?
I love our trait list. It's super fun. But each one obviously comes with some sort of negative as well. And we have a way in the game, kind of an activity or quest you can do to remove that trait, as opposed to, don't like my character, I want to start over. Each of them are something like that you can solve that removes the entire trait for the rest of your playthrough.
The last question, we have speech checks and dialogue.
Okay, so talking about traits here, obviously this is going to be a great thing. This is something that I've always kind of hated in games, because typically when you set up a character in a game, a new playthrough or something like that, you don't, especially, your first time playing through a game, a lot of people, they have their main characters and they have like alternate characters later on. The thing that I've always it's kind of annoyed me with that system is I don't really know how I'm going to play the game my first time going through it. It's one of those things I kind of figured out later on. And, if I didn't set up my base character with the right traits or right origin or whatever, it seems like it was a little bit of a waste, and it doesn't fit the play style I want to have with that game, right? So I'm kind of glad you're going to be able to kind of reset your origin traits, or your traits here at least. I'm kind of curious on, those little quests or things that you're going to have to do. Kind of curious how long some of that might take or be or whatnot. But glad that mechanic's going to be in the game. Once we kind of get into the game, we kind of figure out how, our different play styles are going to fit into Starfield. It allows us to then change maybe and potentially how we want to adjust our origin traits so that it fits our play style a little bit better, rather than going in and finding out that the traits that we picked doesn't really fit how I want to play this game. The other thing that's going to be kind of interesting here is, what are going to be some of the side effects of me having a trait in the early beginning, and getting rid of a specific trait and going to a new one, right? I know some of them, like, you start with a house, and if you get to the part in the game where you're going to have houses already and you choose to remove that trait, well, does that remove that house even though you already have houses unlocked? So it's just kind of interesting to see. And I also believe there's a trait where you have your parents are still alive. And so it'd be kind of interesting to see, what happens then if you remove that trait, right? Do your parents just like insta boom death? So you have the power of God in your hand at any time against your parents. So they better be nice to you, I guess. Better make sure they're getting you your allowance on time and keeping up with inflation. So it's just going to be kind of interesting to see kind of how some of that works.
That reflect your character build. Do you want to expand upon that at all?
Yeah, look, we've done a lot of different dialogue systems. We've gone back to kind of I'll call it like a classic Bethesda style dialogue, with you're looking at the character and how they emote. You have a series of choices there. The scope of the game, the amount of content we're making, is a bit more than we've done before in terms of quests and things like that. But the depth in some of this stuff with the dialogue, we just passed 250,000 lines. And so that's a lot of dialogue, but we've gone through it and the impact is really there. And that includes my favorite speech, Persuasion.
So I'm going to pause it here just a quick, and then I'll go ahead a few more scenes. First off, a little bit over 250,000 lines of dialogue in the game. That's pretty cool. He's just talking about a lot of that depth of the dialogue system and really the impact that it's going to have. And it's not just, even though, you have different dialogue choices, it's not just a linear path, which is one thing that, as you're playing through Fallout 76, like I have earlier this year, you're not really seeing like huge impacts on the dialogue choices you have. So hopefully, they will be more impactful in the game, kind of like what he's talking about here.
System.
You're not talking us out of this score.
It feels like it's part of.
The next thing you're seeing here is, first off, I'm really glad to see, a very clear, like +1, +3, +4, +5 value that is part of a dialogue choice. And it looks like at the bottom we can see potentially, I believe under that Persuasion down here at the bottom, it looks like we have 4 bars or 4 possible, our level is maybe 4, I guess, and we can't really go over that. So I really kind of like that, because as you played through other games before, especially if you're kind of new to those style of games, you don't really fully understand like what your level is of Persuasion. So really kind of nice to see that they kind of have that in the game right there in dialogue choices. So very going to be very interesting to see. You know, we're not going to really probably fully see dialogue choice impact. Where they're just showing us different dialogue choices, but hopefully we do get really good dialogue impact. But yeah, probably won't see that until we get our hands on the game and people have different dialogues that then take them to different quests or different parts of quests and stuff like that. Be very interesting to see that later on in the game.
The dialogue, but you're spending points to persuade them.
You willing to give up the ship? Just like that?
It feels natural, not like I've entered some other mode where I'm not doing regular dialogue. It's just I'm in this mode of persuading you to get what I want.
Having a way with words might prove useful.
That's it. That's all the questions that I had for today.
Yeah, this has been great. You know, everybody out there, you know, keep it coming. We do really read it all. And also we look forward to showing you more of the game in the future as well.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. That's all we have for today. But don't forget, you can submit your questions at the hashtag below. See you later.
All right, so get to submitting your questions. But like they said, this is a new series. I'm really kind of interested to see what kind of stuff they're going to want to answer. I would imagine they probably already have a full list of questions that they want to have answered in this series, right? Because they're the ones that are like, hey, in this series, we want to answer X, Y, and Z, A, B, C, M, N, O, you know, whatever, pick whatever letter you want. But they're the ones that they want to drive the narrative of the series. You know, you can submit whatever questions you want. They're the ones that want to answer stuff, right? They're the ones that want to communicate a message to the community. So I'd imagine most of the questions that are going to be answered from Bethesda relating to Starfield here in this series is probably already mostly listed. But hey, get out there, throw your questions. Maybe the community will get behind it, and you know, we'll get some answers from them. Really looking forward to what comes from this series, and we'll see what comes from it. Okay, but until next time, be silent and be deadly.